Hey guys, it's Jouelzy, and you guys are lucky that I do not celebrate Christmas because it's 2 a.m. Christmas morning and I'm recording this video. This is actually my gift to you. You know, I guess it's a season of giving, and so I'll just give now because I've been getting a ton of questions. I see you guys comment on this about all of my videos regardless about what the topic is. Can you do a reading list, please? I don't know what would incline you to think that I read a ton of books. I mean, my bookshelf isn't really that big. I know you've seen it in the background of a few of my videos, but maybe it's just my reference to Pueblo Coelho, who I love. I love that man. You should read his blog. Hopefully I can get this up today and share it with you guys. So we're gonna go over some of my favorite books. So truth be told, I really don't have like favorite books per se, because like, you know, I feel like you should never really stop reading, and there's just so many books in the world, so how am I supposed to choose like favorites? But it's really kind of an ever-changing thing, and so for me to put out like a favorite book list, I don't know that would be fair because I've just read so many books. It's just so hard to tailor that down. But these are gonna be, I'm gonna give you the books that have impacted me in life, and that, like, you know, I pull from on an almost daily basis, and that I've referenced in some of my other videos, or just kind of that have shaped my train of thought and my being. Alright, so a few of the books I don't own because obviously buying books isn't always cheap, and you know, the library is a great resource, and I prior to moving to DC always had a library card. I don't know where the library is near me out here. DC just a clusterfuck in general. But when I lived in Brooklyn, I definitely was, Brooklyn Public Library was in there like every other day borrowing books. And yeah, girl. So I kind of took a pursuit to read every single James Baldwin book ever written, and I have read his entire, what is it called? Discography, everything, his essays, his plays. I've read everything James Baldwin has ever written. And my hands down favorite James Baldwin book is Just Above My Head. It's about like a group of boys who are in a gospel choir that travel through the Bible Belt South, and like one of them suddenly goes missing. But the kind of motif of the book is like, which is pretty much the motif of every Baldwin book in general, but I felt like this one was the most humanistic and just the most touching and realistic to kind of how I live and, you know, what's going on in modern society. And that all his books kind of touch on being Black in America, male sexuality. There's always a very religious tint because obviously James Baldwin his father was a Pentecostal pastor, so he grew up in the church, and so he kind of touches on all these motifs of just coming of age and trying to figure out how to be true to you but still be, you know, true to what your parents raised you as, and such as that. And if you have the chance, you should definitely check out the PBS documentary on James Baldwin. It is amazing. And I actually was watching it when I was recording my crochet braid tutorial video. But it's a quick watch and it's really, really good. Second up is a book by Joan Morgan. It's called When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, like the hip-hop feminism in the hip-hop era or something like that. The main title of the book is When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. And this book, like, I completely changed my life. I feel like somebody recommended it to me. I feel like Christine Saul recommended it to me sophomore year of college. And, you know, I think what happens for a lot of young Black, intelligent, intellectual females is that we all go through this period, well, at least I did back in high school, was that you kind of go through this period where you're trying to figure out, you know, how much of a feminist you want to be. And I never really shied away from this term. I know there's been a lot of discussion about feminism around Beyonce, and actually Joan Morgan, I think, wrote a piece on Huffington Post about it. I haven't read it because I'm like overkill on like the Beyonce and feminism writings. But Joan Morgan kind of really shaped my understanding of how I could be comfortable in being a feminist and still be comfortable in the fact that I enjoy hip-hop music, and I come up in this era where this is the music that I listen to and that I love. And, you know, what happened for me is that I was on what we call that site, okplayer.com. Funny enough, that's how I met KimmyTube before she was KimmyTube via that site. But yeah, you know, getting in with a lot of people that like listen to like the roots and boho, neo soul music, and you really kind of get into like this feminist culture of like bell hooks and Audre Lorde and all that stuff. I actually own Bell Hooks Communion, and by large, I don't really like Bell Hooks. Like, I just don't agree with her, and I just really couldn't get down with it. I remember, I don't know if it was in Communion or one of her other books, where, like, she kind of spends a whole chapter talking about, you know, the sexualization of the black female in media, which is true. It's a good point to make. But she kind of goes into like how there was Penny from Good Times is over sexualized. And at that point I was like, girl, you are reaching with your points right now. Like right now this is turning into propaganda and I can't really rock with this. And what I found is a lot of like, I've also read just about all of Alice Walker's books because I obviously like her writing. But amongst that kind of era of writers is that there's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say the demeaning of black men because I'm not on my Tommy Sotomayor shit because I don't agree with nothing that Negro has to say. But I do think I think because they come from the era where there was a rapid feminization of poverty amongst the black community and that there was a lot of black, you know, the drug impact of crack and all this other stuff and just black men kind of leaving the black household and women having to be the stronghold, that it kind of is reinforced in their writing and that the men have really menial roles. And it just seems like a general kind of dissidence towards black men, which I understand from the era that they came from and what they were perceiving, but I really couldn't get down with that. Like I remember in one of Bell Hooks' books, again, she kind of went in on her mother for, her mom, she didn't really agree with the fact that her mother would like make her father's plate and cook his food or like cut his food up for him. She thought that was subjugating. And I don't think that's fair because I think my one issue with kind of the liberal train of thought is that we tend to forget that as much as we want to push for being allowed to think and live the way we want to live, that we then turn on other people and say, oh, you can't live like that if they want to be conservative. Like, I feel like I cannot go into somebody else's household and tell them how to live. And so if I can appreciate if that's somebody else's, you know, life. And so I think Joan Morgan's When Chicken Has Come Home to Roost is like, hands down, if I'm going to suggest another book for you to read When Chicken Has Come Home to Roost. It will definitely enlighten you. It will put you on. It will inspire you. And it's just a great, amazing book. I'm going to probably have to edit some of that shit out because I'll be rambling. Next up is Celestine Prophecy. So this was actually given to me as a birthday gift. I do own this. And I owned When Chicken Has Come Home to Roost, but somebody borrowed it from me and never gave it back. So I should just buy another copy because I used to have it. It's like a bright lime green. My version was a bright lime green cover. But this was given to me as a birthday gift from my homeboy Royce. The Celestine Prophecy. I think it's actually a movie as well by James Redfield, but I heard the movie sucks. I've never watched it, but it's a great, great, great book. It hinges on the kind of mystic religious end, but it doesn't go too deep. You know, I'm a little conservative when it comes to like religious talk. So this didn't offend me at all, but I think it's very, for some it might be a little cliche, but it's a really easy read. And I think it's really good because it's about this guy who kind of on a whim ends up in Peru and traveling into like the ancient mountains and just kind of realizing that how your energy is perceived by other people. All about kind of opening your eyes to how the energy you put out is the energy that you attract. So in the theory, you attract what you put out. So a lot of times when I'm referencing, you know, you attract what you put out and, you know, your energy will bring back things, it's because of reading this book. So even though it might be a little simplified for some, I still think this is a great book because we all need reminders. Isn't that why we go to church every Sunday? Definitely, if I ever did a favorites list, this would definitely be on it. What is the What by Dave Eggers. This definitely kind of pulled me into following the politics of Sudan. And, you know, this book was written prior to South Sudan becoming its own country, but it deals with a young boy, Achak, I don't know how to say his name, Valentino, who traveled from what is now South Sudan up into Ethiopia and down into Kenya, seeking refuge from, what war was it? I don't know if it's particularly the war, but we all know that, is it Bashir? Omar Bashir is the president of Sudan. Is, you know, the Arab part of North Sudan isn't really treating the South Sudanese very well. And then right now, you know, pretty much what's going on in Sudan currently is that there's a conflict amongst the border because of what the oil is, and you know who owns that? The Chinese. So, but I think even though this is a piece of fiction, it definitely follows kind of a historical track, and it's fiction based off of reality. But it's just a really simple language, but so moving. Like, literally, you will cry reading this book. Because it's just so simple in how it explains things. Like, when his homeboy, like, sits under the tree to go die. It's just, like, I've never read something that is simply told that evokes so much emotion. And that's why I really, really love this book. And through all of it, and one of the recommendations is from Khalid Hosseini, who I'm going to recommend next, actually. But what makes me love this book so much is that it reminds you to always be grateful for what you have, because homeboy like goes through the effing ringer. Like, he cannot catch a single break in life. Like, none. Like, no shoes, walks like 1,300 miles, goes to Ethiopia, is back to Kenya. People just keep getting killed in his life. He gets to America, in Atlanta, and he doesn't get treated any better. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for him. And throughout this man still holds on to his faith in a higher being. I'm telling you, the fact that he can still walk out of this and believe in God and believe in a better tomorrow and believe and still have hope in life just means that, that's why, after I read this book, I never would use the term FML, the fuck my life term. I just think it's so inconsiderate to people that are going through way worse to still wake up every morning with a piece of hope. And that's something that when I pray, I usually do pray that, God will give people the hope to make it through another day, because hope is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing. But speaking of what is the what, I also like The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, which was also turned into a movie. The movie sucked because as much of American propaganda. This book is based in Afghanistan, and it kind of really speaks to also the cultural and historical heritage of Afghanistan. And it does it, I think a lot of us kind of feed into the turban, Taliban mystique of what we think Afghanistan is. And really, Afghanistan's on the Caucasus Mountains. A lot of Afghanis look like white people. I actually had a homegirl for Shetta in high school with the same birthday, and she was from Afghanistan. And her entire family was blonde hair, bright green eyes, and they were Afghani. And that's how a lot of Afghanistans look. And I really appreciate it because the villain in this book was blonde hair, blue eyed, looked like a white man, for all intents and purposes. Don't we call white people Caucasian? Caucasus Mountains, put it together. Villain, and in the movie they changed him to look like an Arab, and I was just I'm not here for any of this because you just killed a major motif and plot in the book. But it deals with kind of human sin and forgiveness, in that the main character witnesses something happen to their friends and they don't do anything about it, and they don't help their friend out, and their friend ends up kind of going down the trail of what we think of the image that we see when we think of Afghanistan, and being the Pushtun out in the woods or the farmland somewhere and just kind of struggling through life. And he gets dealing with having the opportunity to rescue his friend, but he didn't. And not because he was evil, not because he was bad, but we've all kind of gone through these points in life where we've had the opportunity to do better and we didn't necessarily do better. And so this is kind of the redemption story and him righting his wrongs in a very humanistic and local way. It's not some evil witch of the West, highbrow, this is the bad guy and this is the good guy. No, it's just dealing with kind of what the things we do as humans and the implications that those have, and having to pedal back and take care of that as adults in a roundabout way. See, I suck at explaining books. But yeah, that's that. So this is another one. This is actually, I'm going to do 2 in 1 because I've read them both. Ooh, did I not pull it? Let me pull it from my bookshelf. Gloria Naylor, I read her in high school, part of my AP English class. I had to pick 2 of her books. These are 2 books that I picked. She wrote Women in Brewster Place, which Oprah Winfrey turned into a movie. It's also a great book, but that's standard writing. I think you should also go back and read. I would suggest if you read any of her other books, Lyndon Hills, definitely kind of deals with the talented 10th mentality of bougie Negroes, and the fact that there was the Nadeed family, and they were the crown jewels of the black community, and they were morticians, and they owned a funeral home, and they lived at the bottom of the hill, and everybody was striving to get to them because they were kind of what everybody strived to. But in all honesty, their family wasn't you kind of look inside the family and realize that behind the glass it ain't all that it seems to be. And just the mentality of people who all want to keep up with the Joneses and live for something that really doesn't have much content. So, you want to know why I don't like bougie black people read Lyndon Hills? Bailey's Cafe is more of a mystic kind of home book where all these characters come in, and it tells each one of their stories in each chapter. And so, I don't even remember the character's name, but I read this in high school and it's all highlighted because I had to write a report on it. But there was one character in particular that really touched me, and I forget his name, but he went to like the HBCU in like the early 40s, 50s, and he started off as an English major, but because that was such a subjective subject, and there was, you know, his teachers was always grade him low because he was black, and he ended up switching to math because it was an objective, and there is a right and a wrong in math. And I think that's part of the reason why in the African American community until recently we were so stuck on the science and math subjects. And I'm saying the more traditional in like becoming an engineer or becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a mathematician. You know, when I started college and I was like, oh, I'm a technical theater major, people looking at me like, you're a what? Huh? I got a lot of shade within the black community, and I think we tend to go for things that we know are succinct, and that someone cannot tell you that you're wrong when there is a right and a wrong answer based off of your skin complexion. So we all know 2 + 2 is 4. Somebody can't tell you that you're wrong because you're black. And I think that's probably why I like Billy's Cafe so much, because it was like this aha moment for me. Down here, I love me some Miriam Makeba, and this is the book, her biography. Is this her autobiography or her biography? It is her autobiography. She helped write it with James Hall, and I just think her story is so interesting. She said like her life in here, where she met Jomo Kenyatta, Harambee, president of Kenya, former president of Kenya, and just kind of like how she, you know, came about in this era of apartheid. And I think, you know, rest in peace to Nelson Mandela, but her story kind of brings even more light to that entire situation and her fight through music and culture, you know, kind of being removed from her home country and, you know, being this iconic woman in another land, but not being able to go back to her home. And she does go through a lot of struggle and strife, and I think it's just a great read, and I have no other words for it. And, you know, she married Stokely Carmichael, which kind of also had a negative impact on her career, but she stood firm in what she believed in, and she really persevered forward, and I just think it's a great story, and I love Pass the Time. For young girls, it's definitely inspiring to read about the women that came before us, and just as we should read Asada, that's another one you should read. I think Makeba is probably an overlooked one, and her music and her sound and just kind of how she moved our culture, I think is definitely inspiring. So I was a theater major in college, so this is why this one makes the list, because I used this book, I used one of the monologues to audition for college. But this is The Color Museum. It's one of my favorite plays. I did have an opportunity to see it on Broadway. It is amazing. It is by George C. Wolfe. I believe that Tony Kushner helped produce the Broadway play of it. Yes, I used to be a theater geek. And it just kind of, so there are, what I believe when I took theater history at Howard University, the Fine Arts Building, I forget the professor's name, but she was a Delta, and she was just hard. She was just so hard. But I do remember that we learned there were 7 motifs in the Negro theater, and this book is about the motifs that keep recurring in Negro theater and playing upon the stereotypes and motifs of African Americans in the theater, in media at the time. The Negro on the couch, the tragic mulatto, the mammy character, the dissident soldier, they're all kind of played upon, and you know, they bring a light kind of where these stereotypes are shaped from, and kind of the irony in them, and what the truth is that they're really underscoring. And that's why I love this play so much. If you're ever into reading plays, check out The Color Museum. And of course, you know, for Color Girls Who Consider Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, not the Tyler Perry version, you should have already read that. You know, I just think certain things go without saying. So my last book that I'm going to recommend on this list is The Prince by Machiavelli. So I'm recommending this book, and I ended up reading it because I know everyone has read or heard of the 50 Laws of Power or the 48 Laws to Power, and I used to own that book, and I don't know what happened to my copy of it. Somebody probably took it. But the 48 Laws of Power, everybody in their mama done claimed to have read, Negroes especially. You know, everybody's chasing after the dollar sign and his lifestyle of popping bottles in the club and Valencia filters. Is like, oh yeah, I read 48 Laws of Power. That book is thick, and I read it. It's not an easy read, and so I know people just be going through reading the chapter titles like, yeah, get money, and that's not what the book is about. And if you actually go in the book, on the sidelines, it shows you the notes to where he kind of is drawing his basis off of the 48 Laws of Power for, and a lot of it is based off of Aesop Fables, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and The Prince by Machiavelli. I read Aesop Fables, I read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and so after I read 48 Laws of Power, I went and picked up The Prince. And it goes over the principalities of wanting power and ruling a people and kind of what that requires. And I think it's just a good read for understanding how to navigate life, especially as a Black woman if you're trying to pursue a career and work yourself up the career ladder. I think it's just, you know, if you ever have the idea of whether you want to be an entrepreneur or run your own business, I think The Prince brings to light a lot of things that we tend to overlook, in that, you know, a true ruler never really strives to have complete power. And that, you know, people that are really good at having power understand that they have to present themselves in a certain lifestyle, in a certain way, and that they still care for the people underneath them or the people that they are ruling over, and how they go about treating their dominion. And so I think The Prince is just, it's a great read. And it just gives you a lot of tips on life and things to take from. And for all you Illuminati haters, you know, I think, you know, Machiavelli is a good start for those who are looking for more insight on what the Illuminati really was, because it's not what we all are claiming that Kanye and Jay-Z are part of. That ain't it, girl. That ain't it. But The Prince is definitely a good read, and just understanding how to use your power in the right light. It's like understanding the principalities of having even just control or power over your own life. So that is that. All right, so I said before that my favorite book was The Temple of My Familiar by Alice Walker. It is really one of my favorite books because of a chapter in the book called The Gospel According to Shug Avery. This is Alice Walker's sequel to The Color Purple, and it pretty much rewrites the history of mankind through the viewpoints of the Black female, in that she is the creator of mankind and the world. So I realized that I didn't have a copy of this book, so I ordered it on Amazon, but apparently I ordered it twice. I ordered the hardcover and the paperback. So now I have 2 copies of this book. So why not just do a giveaway and give away, I'm going to give away the paperback version of this book so you can have it to read as well. So what I want you to do below is tell me what your favorite book is and why, and let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you haven't, what book are you most likely to pick up and read, and I will select one winner in this contest. Will close 7 days from me posting it, 1 week, and I will mail this out to you. Okay, keep it simple, keep it sweet. Thanks for watching. I hope this satiates all you guys' demands for book reading list. This is my short list of books, and I'm sure this video is long, and I'm shitty at retelling book stories, but thanks for watching. Deuces.